Congratulations on making the finals.
Thank you very much.
Okay, before we get started on all the formalities, let's just all take a really deep breath. Calming breath. Okay? We'll introduce ourselves now. My name is Pat Wong. I'm a retired Superior Court Commissioner from Sacramento, California.
My name is Joe Stewart. I'm a professor of political science at Clemson University in South Carolina.
My name is Anthony Arpino. I'm an environmental attorney in Montpelier, Vermont.
Would you introduce yourselves?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sumang Chintamani.
Brianna Meyer.
Matthew Skibo.
Cameron Clawater.
Catherine Palmer. We're Unit 3 from Munster High School, representing the state of Indiana, and our teacher is Mr. Michael Gordon. We're now ready to testify.
All right, as you can imagine, it is question 1 of Unit 3. An American scholar claims that because democracy is a government by persuasion and deliberation, it implies the existence of what in the British tradition is known as the loyal opposition. So long as the opposition is attached to the fundamental principles upon which democratic government is based, organized opposition to the prevailing government is not only legitimate, but essential to its proper functioning. Do you agree or disagree? And why? How would you describe or define loyal opposition? And how would you distinguish it from obstructionism? What purposes does or should loyal opposition serve in a democracy? You may begin.
I do not love Congress. Senator Evan Bayh.
These 5 little words splashed across the front pages and news desks of America on February 15, 2010, when Indiana's junior senator announced his retirement. These 5 little words caused quite an uproar. Congress is being criticized by one of its own.
Senator Bayh's remarks illustrate the existence of loyal opposition. A minority within his own Democratic Party, Senator Bayh was opposed to the actions of his party in Congress as a whole. Bayh intended his criticisms to help Congress come together and pass necessary legislation, thus representing loyal opposition.
Loyal opposition is defined by an individual, faction, or party who opposes an action or position of the majority. However, the criticisms must serve to benefit the common good, not the individual interest of the speaker. Loyal opposition must also remain true to the constitutional principles upon which our government is founded.
We agree that loyal opposition is necessary to the proper functioning of any democracy. Without opposition and criticism, we would not be able to stop legislation that would ultimately be harmful. We would not be able to use Congress as a body of deliberation that compromises to achieve the best possible solutions to our problems.
Loyal opposition has its roots in the party conflict between the Whigs and Tories of Britain's 18th century Parliament. The earliest evidence of loyal opposition in the United States was the anti-federalist faction that attempted to prevent the ratification of the Constitution. This faction was able to use its influence to add a Bill of Rights to our Constitution.
Liberty is to faction what air is to fire, an ailment without which it instantly expires. James Madison, Federalist 10.
Factions and parties are inevitable because our Constitution protects the rights of individuals to disagree with and criticize their government. Opposition, though at times difficult for the American public to cope with, is a fact of our deliberative legislative process and extensive freedom.
The election of 1800 brought about the beginning of the two-party system that still dominates our government today. But the rise of political parties has made loyal opposition more difficult because leaders are more interested in gaining power and re-election.
As Jefferson stated in his first inaugural address, every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. We have called by different names, brethren of the same principle. We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists.
Conversely, obstructionism is the deliberate attempt to stall the legislative process. There is a very fine line between loyal opposition and obstructionism. The filibuster is an excellent example of the bending of this line. There is no clause in the Constitution that says a 3/5 majority is necessary to pass a piece of legislation, but the Senate's rules have changed procedures to protect the minority's interests.
The filibuster can be a tool of loyal opposition only if it is used judiciously. The filibuster should not be used on every piece of legislation that the minority opposes.
Loyal opposition is embodied in party politics. Elections demonstrate additional purposes of loyal opposition. Opposition forces candidates and voters to become informed and engaged in political discourse. Through voting, we are able to express our opposition to the status quo. However, loyal opposition does not end at the ballot box.
After elections are completed and the votes are tallied, opposition keeps policy from becoming too radical. With opposition, what is potentially harmful to polity often does not survive. Because you need to compromise in order to gain votes from one side or the other, policy ends up closer to the center than at the extremes.
Senator Bai's remarks and other signs of loyal opposition in today's society embody legitimate democratic principles. The word opposition often carries negative connotations, but as legendary newsman Edward R. Murrow stated, "We must not confuse dissent with disloyalty. When the loyal opposition dies, I think the soul of America dies with it."
Thank you. What relationship do you think there exists among the concepts of limited government, checks and balances, and loyal opposition?
Well, I think that loyal opposition is not limited to just Congress, as we've stated. In reference to checks and balances, we can see in 1920 when President Wilson was trying to have the United States join the League of Nations. But Congress, as the check, did not ratify this treaty because they were fundamentally opposed to the way in which we would join. And we were afraid that we would have to be bound to what the League said. So I think through those checks and balances, Congress showed loyal opposition to the presidency.
An example of limited government as it relates to federalism would be an example, the health care bill that just passed. Many states, fearing that the federal government has overstepped its bounds, have actually challenged and filed lawsuits against this bill that they believe infringes upon their 10th Amendment rights.
I think the vehicles that you've described also provide more of a stage for loyal opposition to really do what it's meant to do and confine government into something that's good for everyone as opposed to just one part of your faction.
And even President Obama, in response to the Supreme Court, has stated in response to FEC v. Citizens United that he, as well as Congress, will work towards overturning the decision. So this might come about through a constitutional amendment.